Welcome back to the Deep Dive, listeners. Today, we're taking a look at something pretty interesting when it comes to teaching. We usually focus on the kids, right?
Hmm.
But what about the teachers?
Yeah, the teachers.
Exactly. So we all know that good teacher-student relationships help students do better, you know, engage more in class, and even get better grades. But you know what we don't talk about as much?
The impact on the teachers themselves.
You got it. We're going to dive deep into how those daily interactions actually affect teachers, not just their work lives, but also their personal well-being.
Absolutely. It makes sense, right? If you think about how much time teachers spend with their students, it's bound to have an effect.
Oh, for sure. And that's what we're exploring today, drawing on some really fascinating insights from a review in the Educational Psychology Review.
Hmm.
We really want to understand the human experience of teaching, what it's like for the educators themselves.
Yeah, I love that. It's not just about the curriculum or the test scores, it's about the people. Totally. And to really grasp the nuances of this connection, we're going to touch on the transactional model of stress and coping. Now, that might sound a bit jargony, but stick with us.
It's actually pretty straightforward, I promise.
Basically, it boils down to this. How we react to things and how we interpret those experiences shapes our emotional well-being. So, how does that model set the stage for our discussion today?
Well, the transactional model is crucial because it shows us that stress isn't just about, the stuff that happens to us. It's more about how we perceive and judge those events and how we react to them emotionally. So for teachers, every single interaction with a student is an event that they're constantly evaluating. Like, are they learning? Am I doing a good job? Are their needs being met?
Yeah.
And those constant evaluations, those emotional responses day after day, really shape their overall well-being.
Okay, yeah. So it's not just about the external pressures, but it's like an internal filter, right?
Exactly. All right, cool. So let's get down to basics. Why should we even care about teacher well-being? Like, it seems pretty obvious, but I'm sure there's more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. Understanding teacher well-being is super important for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
First off, it directly impacts the sustainability of the teaching profession. When teachers are doing well, they're more likely to stay in their jobs. That means more stability for schools and for the kids.
Right. Yeah. Teacher retention is a huge issue.
Huge. And teacher well-being is a key factor in preventing burnout, keeping teachers engaged and committed to their work.
Makes total sense. What else does it impact, like in the research?
Well, a teacher's emotional state can also influence how open they are to new ideas, like school reforms or new intervention programs. Think about it. Teachers are the ones who implement these changes in the classroom. So if they're feeling burnt out or unsupported, they might not be as receptive.
Right, right. It's like you can't expect someone to be innovative when they're overwhelmed.
Exactly. And maybe the most important thing is that teacher well-being has a huge impact on the students themselves. Research actually suggests that a teacher's emotional state can influence the student's social and emotional development and even their academic performance.
Wow, so it's like a ripple effect. A happy teacher can lead to happier, more successful students.
Precisely. And here's the thing that I find really interesting. Most research on teacher well-being has focused on organizational stressors, things like workload, administrative tasks, and support from leadership.
Yeah, the structural stuff.
Yeah. But the relationships with students, those interpersonal connections, they've often been overlooked.
That seems like a pretty big oversight when you consider how much time teachers spend interacting with students every day.
Right. It's hard to imagine those relationships wouldn't have a profound impact on their emotions.
For sure. Okay, so let's dig into what the research actually says about this link between teacher-student relationships and teacher well-being.
Great. So some of the earliest research comes from interviews with teachers. There was this study in 2000 by Hargreaves where he interviewed 60 teachers. And you know what he found? The number one source of enjoyment and motivation for those teachers was their relationships with their students.
Wow, so that personal connection really matters.
Absolutely. And that was true for both primary and secondary teachers. But there were some differences. Primary school teachers tended to report more intense emotional experiences, both positive and negative.
So stronger highs and lows.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'd feel more joy and connection, but also more frustration or even anger at times. While secondary teachers really emphasize the importance of mutual respect and acknowledgement from their students.
Oh, interesting. So for younger kids, it's more about those intense emotions, and for older students, it's about that feeling of respect.
That's a great way to put it. And we see similar findings in studies on teacher satisfaction. One study by Shan in 1998 focused on middle school teachers. You know what consistently ranked as the most important and satisfying aspect of their job? Positive teacher-student relationships.
Wow, so it's not just about the subject matter, it's about those personal connections.
Exactly. Now, beyond those qualitative insights, we also have some quantitative data from correlational research, and this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
So studies have shown that teacher-reported conflict in their relationships with students is linked to lower teacher efficacy.
Meaning they don't feel as confident in their ability to teach.
Right, and this is important. It's the conflict that seems to matter, not necessarily the lack of closeness.
So it's not just about warm, fuzzy feelings, it's about the absence of negativity.
That's it. And in some cases, high levels of teacher-student conflict were even linked to increased reports of depression in preschool teachers.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
Yeah. And other studies have found that a greater proportion of negative teacher-student relationships in a classroom is associated with higher levels of teacher stress and negative emotions overall.
Makes sense. Now, on the flip side, was closeness linked to anything positive?
Well, one study found that closeness with pre-K students was positively related to teachers' confidence in managing difficult behavior. But interestingly, there wasn't a direct link to lower levels of depression in that particular study.
Hmm. So it seems like positive relationships can give teachers a boost, but the negative ones can really drag them down.
That's a great takeaway.
Right.
And it all points to the idea that teachers need to feel connected and respected by their students. It's not just about delivering a lesson, it's about those human interactions.
Okay, so we've established that these relationships really matter. Now let's talk about why. What are the psychological mechanisms at play?
All right, so let's dive into some theories. One really helpful way to understand this is through self-determination theory, or SDT.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. SDT basically says that humans have three basic psychological needs: autonomy, belongingness, and competence.
Like feeling in control, feeling connected, and feeling capable.
You got it. And when these needs are met, we tend to feel more motivated and happy. Now, in the context of teaching, it's likely that those interactions with students are a key source of fulfilling the need for belongingness.
Yeah, it makes sense. Teachers spend so much time with their students. Those relationships are bound to impact their sense of belonging.
Absolutely. And when those relationships are positive, it can really fuel a teacher's intrinsic motivation, like that inner drive and satisfaction they get from teaching itself.
Awesome. You also mentioned attachment theory earlier. How does that play into this?
Attachment theory is all about our need to form close bonds with others, and it suggests that our early childhood experiences shape how we view and approach relationships later in life. We develop these mental models or schemas for how relationships work.
So like our past experiences kind of create a template for how we interact with others.
Exactly. And it's thought that teachers develop these mental models for their relationships with students, too. There's like a global model for relationships in general, and then a more specific model for relationships in the context of teaching.
Okay, so a teacher might have certain beliefs about their role as an educator, like whether they see themselves as a caregiver or more of an instructor.
Exactly. And they might have beliefs about whether relationships can change and grow, or if they're kind of fixed.
Right, like some teachers might believe that they can build a positive relationship with any student, while others might think that some personalities just clash.
Exactly. And then, on top of that, teachers also develop relationship-specific models for individual students. Like, they form an image of that child in their mind, and they have feelings associated with interacting with them. And those relationship-specific models can actually influence the teacher's overall sense of self-worth and their professional identity.
Wow, so a challenging relationship with one student could actually impact how a teacher sees themselves as a teacher in general.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. And some researchers even suggest that teachers might consciously or unconsciously seek emotional security or corrective emotional experiences from their students.
Interesting. Like they might be trying to heal some old wounds through their interactions with students.
Possibly. It's definitely something to consider. Now, you mentioned two tools earlier, the STRS and the TRI. Could you remind us what those are?
Sure. The Student-Teacher Relationship Scale, or STRS, is a questionnaire that teachers use to rate their relationships with individual students. It looks at things like conflict, closeness, and dependency. And the Teacher Relationship Interview, or TRI, is a more in-depth interview that explores teachers' feelings and beliefs about their relationships with students.
And those tools have been really helpful in understanding these complex dynamics. For example, research using the STRS has consistently shown that teacher reports of conflict and closeness are strong predictors of how well students function in school.
So the quality of the relationship really matters.
Absolutely. And the TRI allows researchers to dig deeper into the teacher's emotional experience.
So it's not just about behaviors, it's about those internal feelings and beliefs.
Exactly. And research has also linked a teacher's general adult attachment style to their experiences in the classroom. Like, their attachment style might influence their reasons for becoming a teacher, their preferred behavior management strategies, and even how they evaluate their relationships with students.
Fascinating. So all of this points to a fundamental human need for connection.
Right. That need to belong is super powerful. And for teachers, those daily interactions with students are a prime opportunity to fulfill that need.
Yeah, it makes sense. They're surrounded by people all day long.
Exactly. And when those relationships are positive, it can really boost their well-being. But when they're negative, it can lead to feelings of rejection, isolation, and even failure.
So it's not just about their professional competence, it's about their sense of self-worth as a human being.
Precisely. And those mental models we talked about earlier, those schemas for relationships, they can really intensify those feelings.
Okay, so we've got this need for connection, and we've got these mental models shaping our perceptions.
Yeah.
Now let's bring back the transactional model and talk about how all of this affects a teacher's emotions in the classroom.
So remember that the transactional model highlights the role of appraisal. Our emotions come from how we interpret the events happening around us.
Right, like the same event can trigger different emotions in different people depending on how they see it.
Exactly. And in teaching, stress often arises from perceived threats to the teacher's self-esteem or well-being. And those daily hassles, those negative emotions that build up over time, they can contribute to burnout.
And that's where emotional labor comes in, right?
Absolutely. Teaching is emotionally demanding. And those mental models of relationships, they shape how teachers interpret student behavior, which
Yeah.
then influences how much emotional labor they have to expend.
So a teacher who has a negative view of a particular student might overreact to even a minor misbehavior.
Yeah, that's a good example. And research has shown that internalized negative feelings about a relationship tend to predict more negative interactions.
So it can become a vicious cycle.
It can. And a teacher's attachment style also plays a role here. Teachers with avoidant attachment styles might downplay the emotional aspects of their relationships, while those with anxious, preoccupied styles might take conflict more personally.
Okay, so their past experiences and their personality can really influence how they handle those emotional challenges in the classroom.
Totally. Now, let's talk about student misbehavior. We know it's a major source of stress for teachers.
Yeah, that's like the classic teacher complaint.
Right. But here's the thing. Teachers often react very differently to what seems like the same behavior in different students.
So it's not just about the behavior itself, it's about the relationship with the student.
That's a key insight, and that's where those relationship models come in. They act as a filter for how teachers perceive and interpret student behavior.
So a teacher who has a good relationship with a student might see their misbehavior as a one-off thing, while a teacher who has a strained relationship might see it as a personal attack.
Exactly. And research using the STRS has shown that teacher reports of relationship quality are actually better predictors of their stress levels than just looking at general measures of student misbehavior.
So it's not just about counting the number of times a student acts out, it's about the emotional dynamic between the teacher and the student.
Right. And longitudinal research has even shown that a teacher's perception of a student's behavior can actually influence their mental model of the relationship and vice versa. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So if a teacher sees a student as troublesome, they might be more likely to interpret their behavior in a negative light, which then reinforces that negative perception.
Exactly. It's like a feedback loop. And the evidence suggests that these mental models might actually mediate or partially explain the link between student misbehavior and teacher stress.
Okay, wow, this has been a really deep dive. What are the main takeaways for our listeners?
Well, the biggest takeaway is that teacher well-being is closely tied to the quality of their relationships with students. And these relationships are filtered through those mental models, which shape how teachers experience and interpret everything that happens in the classroom.
So it's not just about managing behavior, it's about fostering positive connections.
Absolutely. And for future research, we need to go beyond just measuring stress and burnout. We need to explore the positive aspects of teacher well-being, like motivation and commitment. And we need to develop more nuanced ways to measure those complex interpersonal experiences in the classroom.
Totally agree. We need to move beyond simple surveys and really dig into the emotional lives of teachers.
And we need more longitudinal studies to really understand how these relationships develop and change over time.
Great points. Well, listeners, as you reflect on this deep dive, think about this. How might fostering positive teacher-student relationships not only benefit the students, but also help create a more supportive and fulfilling environment for teachers?
It's a win-win situation.
It really is. And it highlights the fact that being truly well-informed about education means understanding those human connections that are at the heart of the teaching profession.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, what are your thoughts, listener? How might this understanding change how we value and support the incredibly important work that teachers do every single day? Food for thought. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.